Chapter 841. Consort Zheng's face instantly filled with anger. Just as she was about to explode, she suddenly changed her mind and reached out to clutch her stomach, crying out, my stomach, my stomach." The accompanying palace maid, Kaling, hurried forward and anxiously supported Consort Zheng's body while shouting, "Your Majesty the Queen! Your Majesty the Queen! I beg of you to uphold justice. The Crown Princess has angered Her Majesty the noble consort to the point that her stomach hurts." Wei Ziqin's expression changed greatly. She reached out to grab her daughter's small hand and sternly glared at the palace maid called Kaling. "Don't speak nonsense. Casually slandering the Crown Princess should be punished with capital punishment." Arba patted the back of her mother's hand to reassure her. Her cold gaze swept over Consort Zheng and the corner of her mouth hooked up. "Xiao Yao, go invite Dr. Chow from the Imperial Physician Building to come over. Just say that Consort Zheng's stomach hurts and have him come over to take a look." "Yes." Xiao Yao didn't suspect anything and nodded to leave. Consort Zheng's hand that was clutching her stomach stiffened slightly. Then, her expression changed greatly. "Stop. Crown Princess, there's no need for you to worry about this. I've always had a doctor I'm familiar with to treat me. There's no need for you to interfere." "How can that be?" Arba walked step by step in front of Consort Zheng. Her dark eyes coldly stared at her. "If I don't invite the head doctor over to take a look, what if something happens to Young-hee and she insists on blaming it on me? Then wouldn't I be unable to wash away this filth even if I jumped into Wang-hai, HM? What a formidable crown princess." Everyone was slightly shocked and looked over in awe. Only noble consort Zhang and Kaling were looking into Qiao Mu's eyes. They only felt like there were countless bony arms in the depths of those eyes that wanted to pull them, master and servant, into the abyss of hell. Consort Zheng shrieked in surprise. Without caring about her image, she shrank behind Kaling. "Enough." Queen Zhao was furious. It was the first day of the first lunar month, and she had already given her so much trouble. She didn't like Consort Zheng, and she didn't like this crown princess either. He only felt that the two of them, one big and one small, were both troublemakers. As soon as they bumped into each other, they started arguing with each other. "Crown Princess, our Imperial Highness is pregnant. Can you please speak nicely to her?" Kaling cried as she begged, putting on the appearance of a loyal servant. Arba sneered and asked in a voice so low that only the master and servant could hear, "Pregnant? Are you sure?" Consort Zheng's expression changed abruptly. Her resentful eyes were filled with disbelief. She looked at Arba in horror. Qiao Mu's lips cracked open like a wooden carving, and she gazed icily at noble consort Zhang and her servant. She asked coldly, "What if I make this matter known to the world?" "Don't." Noble consort Zhang cried out in alarm. Sensing the queen and many royal concubines casting puzzled gazes at her, she immediately straightened her body as a chill ran down her spine. She straightened her face and said, "Kaling, don't speak nonsense. My stomach is just feeling a bit uncomfortable. You're making a fuss about nothing. What if you wrongly blame the crown princess? What should we do?" Queen Zhao's cold gaze landed on Consort Zheng as if she wanted to burn a hole in her face. She wanted to see why she suddenly changed her attitude. Noble Consort Zhang stood up by herself and forcefully supported Kaling's hand, saying, "Help me to sit over there." It wasn't until she returned to her seat that noble Consort Zhang looked at the crown prince consort, who had sat down on her own, in shock. Chapter 842. Since the crown princess already knew about this, why didn't she directly inform Her Majesty the Queen? Therefore, it could be said that the crown princess also had some opinions about Her Majesty the Queen. If she could grasp the animosity between the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law and exploit it, then perhaps she could. In reality, Consort Zhang was truly overthinking things. The little stoic had never viewed Consort Zhang as an enemy, and she couldn't be bothered to meddle in the harem's trifling affairs. In her eyes, Consort Zhang was already a dead person. It was only a matter of time, and she wouldn't be able to do it for too long, so why should she waste the effort? Moreover, she only had her initial suspicions before. After all, the special beautifying pill state Uncle Zhang purchased at an astronomical price also had other special medicines added to it besides heat poison. This medicine could guarantee that Consort Zhang wouldn't be able to conceive in this lifetime. However, she was only suspicious at the beginning and wasn't certain. She didn't expect that she would be duped into revealing her fake pregnancy as soon as they met. It was truly hilarious. After Arbor returned to her seat, various royal concubines came forward to greet her one after another. She greeted them one by one in a distant yet courteous manner before minding her own business and whispering to Jolin. Princess Anam arrives. After the announcement, a thin woman fully dressed as a princess consort walked in from the long passageway outside the hall. This subject greets Her Majesty the Queen. Please rise, Princess Consort. Queen Zhao still had a smile on her face when she saw Wu Hongmo. The vassal king of Annan was one of the vassals conferred by the late emperor with a different surname, so the queen naturally had more respect for Princess Anam. Princess Consort, you've lost a lot of weight, Queen Zhao said after glancing at Wu Hongmo. I've troubled Her Majesty the Queen to worry. Wu Hongmo smiled and sighed, either intentionally or unintentionally. Today is the first day of the first month of the new year, a day for family reunions. I'm not afraid that Her Majesty the Queen will laugh at me. Today, my sister-in-law woke up early in the morning and went to visit Xiaosu. Poor Xiaosu, a young lady, is being tortured in that kind of dark and gloomy place. The Queen's expression turned a bit awkward, and she even snuck a glance at Xiao Mu. Her son was the one who had caught her. No matter what, she would not let her son lose face and make the decision to release her. She saw the little stoic talking to her younger sister in a low voice and didn't even glance at Wu Hongmo out of the corner of her eye. Perhaps she was pretending not to see Princess Anam. Your Highness. Princess Anam suddenly knelt down. This subject has a presumptuous request. Queen Zhao's expression changed slightly, and her eyes became sharp. Princess Consort, the New Year's banquet is about to begin. You should quickly return to your seat. Wu Hongmo said loudly, this subject earnestly requests the Crown Princess to be merciful and pardon my niece Wu Xiaosu's wrongdoings and release her from prison. Queen Zhao rubbed her forehead as she felt a headache coming on. This morning's events had really made her feel sick. Queen Zhao's gaze fell on Arbor. Many royal concubines, commandery princesses, noble madams, and young misses also turned their gazes towards Arbor. Qiao Lin pursed her lips and tugged at her sister's sleeve. She couldn't help but be furious. Vexing matters were everywhere in the palace. After getting rid of a consort Zhang, another princess consort jumped out. No wonder sister didn't like her. Arbor slowly looked up, and his chilly gaze landed on Wu Hongmo. His voice was frosty as he said, I've never been merciful. I only have killing intent. Chapter 843. Princess Anam was taken aback. She stared at Arbor with a tense expression, and the wrinkles on her face could simply squash a fly to death. The crown princess completely didn't follow the script. How was she supposed to continue acting out her own story? She originally thought that if she cried in this brilliant Sun Hall, the little girl would definitely panic due to her inexperience of the world. Perhaps she would reluctantly agree to release Xiaosu because she couldn't bring herself to go. As long as the little girl said, okay, in this brilliant Sun Hall, even if she wanted to go back on her word afterward, she, Wu Hongmo, would definitely have a way to make her unable to regret and swallow her grievances. Who knew that this little girl's words and actions would completely exceed her expectations, making her at a loss for words. Wu Hongmo sneered and simply turned to face Arbor. She feigned a curtsy and wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes as she said, Crown Princess, please take pity on this aunt's heart. Xiaosu is still alone in prison at the beginning of the new month. If she previously offended you in any way, she has already repaid what she should after being imprisoned for these dozen days. Please. The little stoic's cold face didn't bat an eyelid. Wu Hongmo pretended to kneel down and bent her knees as she lamented, Do you want this old one to kneel down in front of you before you'll release her? This was coercion. All the noble ladies and madams with royal mandates in the hall were dead silent, and only Wei Ziqin was so angry that her entire body was trembling. She abruptly stood up and angrily said, "Vassal king consort of Nan, speaking of which, you are also the crown prince consort's elder. You're making a scene in this hall without any regard for face and crying and making a racket like a shrew. You're deliberately torturing the crown prince consort." "Mother, it's fine." The stoic face was still expressionless as she sent her mother a placating glance. "Please sit down." She then set her gaze on Wu Hongmo. "Princess Anam, why aren't you kneeling?" Arbor asked icily. "It's been a while since you said you'd kneel. Your knees aren't broken, right? It's not like this crown princess can't accept your kneeling." Everyone was dumbfounded. The entire hall was so silent that even a pin drop could be heard. Queen Zhao also sat up straight. That day, when she heard that the crown princess had smashed the classics reverence hall, hit beautiful Huang, and kicked consort Zhang, she had only heard about it. She had never seen it with her own eyes. Today, she saw that her daughter-in-law was indeed not a good person. Princess Anam was probably going to be in trouble today. Everyone cried out in their hearts. Wu Hongmo's face slightly trembled. If she wasn't in the brilliant Sun Hall, she would have jumped up and wanted to tear apart Arbor's mouth. It was simply too depressing and infuriating. Arbor glanced at her coldly, gripped the teacup tightly, and snorted. "So it's just a show. I originally thought that you loved your niece very much, but I didn't expect that you're nothing more than this. You can't even bend your knees, let alone talk about anything else. Let me tell you, Wu Xiaosu's 3-month prison sentence can't be reduced by a single day. You want to fish her out with just a few words? It's not that easy." The teacup in Arbor's hand turned into fine powder with a bang. "Death or 3-month prison? Choose for yourself." A deathly silence pervaded the entire brilliant Sun Hall. No one dared to breathe loudly. They didn't expect that a little girl could emit such a frightening aura. At this moment, not to mention the others, even Princess Anam was endlessly shocked. Chapter 844. Wu Hongmo even felt a bit of regret at this time. She had said that this matter wouldn't work, but her sister-in-law was so annoying that she had to beg the queen for mercy on the first day of the new year. Wasn't this a piece of iron that had been kicked so hard that her foot hurt unbearably? Wu Hongmo couldn't continue singing at this time. Standing on the stage, she couldn't get up or down. Her entire body was stiff and extremely awkward. Fortunately, someone announced that noble Lady Ying had arrived at this time. Everyone's gaze turned to the door. If there wasn't a good reason for her to be late at this time, then it would be considered disrespectful to Her Majesty the Queen. Sure enough, Queen Zhao's expression instantly became very unsightly. Her line of sight seemed to be coated in a layer of ice as it landed on the beautiful figure that gracefully walked in from the door. This beauty was no more than 16 years old. Her small face was like a freshly peeled egg, white with a hint of pink. Her pair of eyes were as soft as water, as if they could suck in a man's soul with a single glance. No wonder His Majesty had been running to Ying Luo Market every day recently. When Consort Zhang saw this woman, she clenched her silver teeth, wishing that she could swallow her whole. It was this slut who had pretended to faint on the side of the road in broad daylight, encountered the great king by chance, and climbed onto the dragon bed in one step. This concubine pays respects to Her Majesty the Queen, and wishes everyone well. The little girl timidly spoke in a small and weak voice, as if she was afraid that someone would startle her. Consort Zhang said with a fake smile, "Oh, noble Lady Ying, you really are a noblewoman with a lot of manners. Coming to pay Her Majesty the Queen a New Year's greeting at this time, such arrogance." Queen Zhao's expression darkened as she coldly stared at noble Lady Ying. Consort Zhang's few words naturally couldn't incite her anger. Consort Zhang was eager for her to punish this little dainty girl, so why should she fulfill her wish? Noble Lady Ying wasn't one to be spoiled. Seeing the situation, she obediently knelt down and kowtowed to Queen Zhao. Only then did she say unhurriedly, "This concubine had left early in the morning. This concubine also wanted to pay a New Year's visit to Her Majesty the Queen. The timing couldn't be wrong." Noble Consort Zhang couldn't stand Noble Consort Ying's delicate and meek appearance the most, so when she heard Noble Consort Ying's words, she rolled her eyes at Noble Consort Ying from the back, and the corner of her mouth involuntarily turned up. Unfortunately, this concubine encountered. Her voice trailed off as she cast an unnatural glance in Noble Consort Zhang's direction. When Consort Zhang saw her acting like this, she couldn't help but get angry. "Noble Lady Ying, are you trying to say that it's this consort's fault that you're late?" "This concubine does not dare," Nguyen said in a delicate and timid voice. Then, she lowered her head and looked like she was ready to be punished. She didn't say anything else. Queen Zhao's heart was filled with annoyance, but she still asked, "What is it?" "There's no harm in you telling me." "Her Majesty the Queen is wise. This concubine was on my way here this morning when I met the 15th Princess Wet Nurse. She cried and begged everywhere to find a doctor from the Imperial Physician Building to treat her." Noble Lady Ying sighed and said, "This concubine saw that Wet Nurse holding the princess and felt that she was truly pitiful. Thus, I instructed the palace maid Sui Qiao to take my name card and go to the Imperial Physician Building to invite the Imperial Physician on duty here. This delay is truly this concubine's fault. This concubine asks for your Majesty's forgiveness." On the side, Consort Chang couldn't help but burst out in laughter. "So this really is Noble Lady's fault. Look at how she's tormented Noble Lady Ying." Chapter 845. Consort Zheng's expression instantly became unsightly. When Queen Zhao saw this, she felt much more at ease and even inwardly praised Noble Lady Ying for being so considerate. However, on the surface, she worriedly assumed the posture of a matriarch and asked, "How is my poor little 15th now?" "Replying to your Highness, the 15th princess condition has stabilized after the doctor's examination. However, the doctor also said that the 15th princess' illness still requires someone to take care of her closely." As she spoke, she obediently knelt there without moving, looking like she was waiting for the queen's punishment. Queen Zhao smiled without batting an eyelid. "Noble Lady Ying, you can rise. You saved little 15th's life, so being a little late is nothing. You've done well. Come, reward her." Noble Consort Zheng's expression turned especially unsightly all of a sudden, and her sharp fingernails nearly pierced into her palms. She cursed that D***** wet nurse a million times in her mind as malicious thoughts surged violently in her mind. "Thank you, Your Highness the Queen." Noble Lady Ying smiled bashfully and accepted the Queen's reward from the tray. She bowed and retreated to the side, sitting down in a well-behaved manner. Arba glanced at her. The two of them were seated quite far from each other, with quite a few princesses and commandery princesses between them. It was also at this moment that the embarrassed Wu Hongmo quietly slipped back to her seat, no longer mentioning the matter of asking for Wu Xiaosu's life. Since she didn't mention it, Arba didn't bother to pay attention to her. Queen Zhao was currently using this as an excuse to reprimand Consort Zheng. "Younger sister Zheng, little 15th's body is weak, yet you don't know how to take care of her? If that wet nurse hadn't carried little 15th out today and coincidentally asked Noble Lady Ying for help, how do you think this matter would have ended?" Consort Zheng couldn't help but be furious. She gritted her teeth so hard that they were broken, but on the surface, she had no choice but to stiffen her neck and turn her head to thank Noble Lady Ying from several short tables away. Noble Lady Ying shook her head. "I don't deserve your Highness' thanks." However, the princess looked a little pitiful. It was such a cold day, yet she was only wrapped in a thin blanket. Now that your Highness is pregnant, she's afraid that the princess's illness will pass, so it's not wrong to leave her in the side hall to recuperate. However, there are some daily necessities that should not be neglected. What? When Queen Zhao heard this, she was greatly shocked. Little 15 has just turned 3 years old. Consort Zheng, you actually threw her to a side chamber to be raised? How dare you neglect her like this? Consort Zheng's eyelids twitched. She hurriedly stood up and almost knocked over the wine beside her. "No, no, Your Highness." Preposterous. Queen Zhao seized the opportunity to fly into a rage. The entire Brilliant Sun Hall became silent. Everyone felt that today's New Year's feast was simply challenging their hearts. Noble Consort Zhang, Vassal King Consort of Nan, Her Majesty the Crown Prince Consort, Her Majesty the Queen, all of these women of high status were playing out one drama after another. Those noble ladies and madams with titles didn't know whether they should continue sitting here or quickly withdraw and let Her Majesty the Queen handle this family matter. "You're really heartless." Queen Zhao slammed the table and angrily said, "No wonder that wet nurse went everywhere to seek treatment, but no one cared. So it was you. You neglected little 15th. No, Your Highness the Queen. My poor little 15th. A cold light appeared in Queen Zhao's eyes. "Why haven't you brought over this queen's poor daughter and let me take a closer look?" Consort Zheng's anger rose 3 feet high, and her body suddenly turned cold for no reason. Chapter 846. This play had come so quickly that she wouldn't believe it if it wasn't deliberately set up. How could noble Lady Ying be so coincidental as to run into the wet nurse carrying the child out to seek treatment? There was something wrong with noble Lady Ying, and there was also something wrong with the wet nurse. Consort Zhang was very anxious and even wanted to send Kaling back to the palace to take a look. However, Queen Zhao coldly stopped her. "Younger sister, it's better if you just sit here. This consort also wants to see what kind of life little 15th is living in Sephora Flower Palace. Could it be that a good princess only has a wet nurse to watch over her? Are all the other servant girls in Sephora Flower Palace dead?" Sweat rolled down Consort Zheng's forehead. "Your Majesty the Queen, noble Lady Ying already said that the child's treatment has been completed. Perhaps she's already asleep." A head palace maid walked in trembling with fear and asked in a small voice, "Your Majesty, it's time to eat the dumplings. Should I order someone to bring them up now?" Consort Zheng was furious. "What time is it to eat dumplings?" Scram! The head palace maid trembled. However, Queen Zhao smiled and said, "Just in time. Bring the dumplings up. We can eat while we wait. It won't take much time to return to Sephora Flower Palace." Consort Zheng's eyes were about to shoot out a poisonous light. This daughter of hers was indeed born to collect debts. Now that someone with ulterior motives was using her as a scapegoat, how could she not hate her to the bone? The dumplings had been made by Queen Zhao and the other noble ladies on New Year's Eve yesterday. Auber had eaten breakfast and wasn't hungry at all. For the sake of the Queen, she ate 2 dumplings as a gesture. Everyone silently ate the dumplings, not daring to speak. They didn't know what the dumplings tasted like in their stomachs. They only felt that their hearts, livers, spleens, and lungs were all trembling. This was the calm before the storm. Not long after, a thinly clothed woman was seen carrying a 3-year-old little girl. She blindly followed the palace maid into the brilliant sun hall. It was probably the first time the little girl had seen so many people. She immediately shrank into the wet nurse's arms and looked around anxiously. Queen Zhao revealed a benevolent smile and beckoned to the wet nurse. "Bring little 15 over for me to take a look." The wet nurse immediately fell to her knees, trembling as she shrieked, "Your Highness, please forgive me. Your Highness, please forgive me." Consort Zheng's heart was suddenly in her throat. She angrily slammed the table and stood up. "Nanny, what are you doing? Come here." Auber impatiently waved at the wet nurse. The wet nurse looked at her blankly, then raised her head to look at Queen Zhao. "Come here," Auber shouted. The wet nurse was intimidated by her imposing manner and was so scared that she rolled and crawled over. Auber clapped his hands at the child. "Come." Little 15 turned her little head and looked at Auber with her eyes as red as a little rabbit's. Suddenly, she stretched out her hands to her. The wet nurse could not help but be stunned for a moment. The princess never liked other people getting close to her. Even Consort Zhang, the princess would stay far away from her whenever she saw her. "Crown Princess," Queen Zhao coldly called out. Auber indifferently raised her head to glance at her. Then, she picked up little 15 and placed her on her lap. She untied the thin blanket wrapped around the child. There are bruises on her hands and legs. She was beaten just 2 days ago. Auber said faintly as she took out a needle bag from her inner world. Her asthma isn't too serious, but she hasn't been properly nurtured since she was young. Chapter 847. Performing acupuncture 3 times can alleviate the initial symptoms. Performing acupuncture 9 times can completely cure the problem. As Auber spoke, she had already quickly performed acupuncture on little 15th. Severe malnutrition. Auber coldly glanced at Consort Zheng and sneered, "I never thought that the child of the great Consort Zheng would also starve." Audacious Consort Zheng. Queen Zhao angrily rebuked, "How did you take care of Princess 15th? Consort Zhang panicked and hurriedly explained, "This concubine has always taken good care of little 15th. Your Majesty the Queen, what do you mean? Little 15th came from my stomach." Auber didn't continue listening, nor was she interested in watching this play. She stood up and walked out of Brilliant Sun Hall with the child in her arms. When she passed by the wet nurse kneeling on the ground, she coldly glanced at her and spoke with a bit of ridicule, "Selling out your master for glory. Take a guess. Will your master let you off?" The wet nurse looked up at her in shock, her entire body trembling like a sieve. "Crown Princess, Crown Princess." Several palace maids ran over and softly reminded her, "The official luncheon hasn't started yet." Did the Crown Princess not see that Her Majesty the Queen's face was already covered in dark clouds? Or could it be that the Crown Princess saw it and pretended not to? Wasn't she looking down on Her Majesty the Queen too much? "I'm full." Auber's icy gaze swept over the palace maids, scaring them into abruptly withdrawing their hands, not daring to stop her. She was never someone who would wrong herself. Since this Brilliant Sun Hall was so stuffy that she wanted to go out for a breath of fresh air, why would she force herself to continue sitting there? "This subject will go see the Crown Princess." Wei Ziqin was worried about her daughter and hurriedly pulled Jolin up. She bowed to the gloomy Her Majesty the Queen in the head seat and then quickly pulled her daughter out. How can someone from such a small family be presentable? He doesn't know any etiquette at all." The woman who spoke was about 25 years old. She was wearing a purple gown with a red collar, embroidered with the colors of fortune and wealth. With a golden rose hairpin on her head, she looked rich and noble. Her face was beautiful, but her brows looked very harsh. This was the 4th Princess Mo Shuang, the only one in the Mo kingdom who, after getting married, made a big fuss about divorcing her husband and forcing him to his death, was now raising a gigolo. Although Queen Zhao was angry with the little stoic, she was even angrier when she saw this 4th princess. She glared fiercely at Lu Fei. "Why did you also bring her here?" Lu Fei was 4th princess's biological mother. She felt wronged and said, "Your Majesty, today is the first day of the first lunar month. According to the rules." All right. The Queen didn't have the patience to listen to Lu Fei's rebuttal. She looked coldly at Consort Zheng and said, "I will report this matter to His Majesty in detail. Since you can't take care of 15th Princess, then this Queen will make a decision for you this time." "What are you doing?" Consort Zheng shouted in alarm. When Wei Ziqin chased after them with her younger daughter, she just happened to see her eldest daughter holding a baby and waiting for them in the corridor. When she saw her mother and younger sister coming out, Auber's icy features relaxed slightly. She nodded at them and said, "I'm fine, Mom. You don't need to worry." "You child." Wei Ziqin heaved a sigh of relief. She pulled Jolin forward and reached out to hug her eldest daughter. "But I'm not happy." Chapter 848. This child had been sharp since she was a child. She should be able to tell at a glance that Her Majesty the Queen didn't like her. Auber carried little 15 and walked along the winding path of broken cobblestones. In a withered garden in winter, only a few small flowers that didn't fear the bitter cold drilled out of the ground. Because they were worried that the flowers and trees would mutate, the palace had wantonly built all kinds of gardens 2 years ago. Some of the exotic flowers and plants were directly cut down. Generally, the most common flowers that had never mutated were planted. "Mom, I'm thinking, isn't this marriage a bit too rash?" Xiao Mu sat on a swing and lightly tapped the ground. She raised her body slightly and raised a hand to touch the thin and weak little 15 in her arms. Wei Ziqin's eyes were filled with faint bewilderment. Could it be that her daughter's heart was beating the drums of retreat? Qiao Qiao, let mother tell you, Xiaomo is a good child, don't take your anger out on him. Don't you think the crown prince is wronged? The trouble caused by this group of imperial concubines will be blamed on him again. Wei Ziqin was a bystander. She saw how well little Mo treated her daughter. If there was even the slightest bit of unkindness, she would definitely not agree to marry off her daughter. Mother, that wet nurse is one of the queen's people. So, this scene was completely arranged by Queen Zhao. It was just that noble Lady Ying, this variable, appeared midway. Or perhaps it could be said that with noble Lady Ying as a variable, this scene became even more exciting to watch. In other words, without noble Lady Ying, the wet nurse's complaint today would still be vigorously reported to the Queen in front of all the madams and young misses. The Queen wanted to grandly and honorably strip Consort Zheng of her daughter's custody. Wei Ziqin looked at her daughter in shock. You? How did you know? Abba sneered and sighed softly. Perhaps, my eyes are bright. Sister, you're really amazing. Jolin sat on another swing rack with a look of admiration on her face. She looked at her sister with adoration. You can even see that. You won't be at a disadvantage in the future. Sister, sister. The baby sitting in Abba's arms called out incoherently. Although you have a father and a mother, you are still a poor child. Abba stroked little 15's head and looked into the distance. In the withering winter, her gaze seemed to fall on a faraway place. Jolin looked at her sister who was sitting beside her. She had a feeling that she couldn't touch her. It was as if his sister at this moment was just a foam-like illusion. The moment he touched her, she would shatter. Jojo. Wei Ziqin couldn't bear to see this kind of empty and numb expression on this child's face the most. She hurriedly reached out and pulled her down from the swing. She hugged her and patted her back with all her strength. Jojo, you're my daughter. I'm here for you. Sister, little Lin, is here too. Little Lin, will protect you. Jolin also jumped down from the swing. She reached out her thin little arms and raised them high to hug her sister from behind. Abba came back to her senses and couldn't help but smile. What are you doing? I'm fine. She was just lamenting in her heart. Little 15 poked her little head out from between the two of them. She looked at this and then that, her eyes full of confusion. Jojo, let's go home. Chapter 849. Abba couldn't help but chuckle. Mother, why are you being so willful? My daughter isn't happy. Can't I be willful for once? Wei Ziqin said angrily. Okay. Then let's go shopping. Jolin immediately raised both hands and feet in agreement. In your dreams. Wei Ziqin raised her hand to pat her younger daughter's head. Who would be selling things today? As the three of them were talking, the tree branch moved and Prince Mo's head suddenly popped out. Brother-in-law. Jolin called out happily. Wei Ziqin hurriedly reached out to cover her mouth. Don't make a fuss. Come, accompany mother. As she spoke, she secretly gave her son-in-law a look. The son-in-law immediately understood his mother-in-law's meaning. Your wife is in a bad mood. Abba raised her head to glance at Prince Mo, then indifferently lowered her head again. As expected, her attitude was very distant. Prince Mo's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly ran forward and reached out to hug her. Slap. Abba blocked his hand and carried little 15 back to sit on her swing. She didn't even bother to look at him out of the corner of her eye. Jojo, I've heard. You've been wronged. Mo Lien hurriedly took the initiative to admit his mistake, his handsome face full of remorse. Don't worry. After this New Year's banquet ends, we won't come if there's nothing. Is noble Lady Ying the person you arranged to come in? Mo Lien's voice suddenly stopped. He cautiously glanced at Abba. Her? What did she tell you? She's too smart. She was able to cooperate with your imperial mother halfway through the show. Arbor abruptly flung the crown prince's hand away. I won't adapt to this kind of scheming life. Instead of letting her scheme against others, she might as well clean them up with her own hands. Emolienne's heart twisted. He hurriedly reached out to pull her into his arms. I didn't ask you to adapt. Do I get used to you? His head rubbed restlessly against the side of her neck. I go where you go. If you go to the sky, I will go to the sky. If you go to the sea, I will go to the sea. It's decided then. Arbor was slightly startled. Half of the resentment that he had been holding in for a long time was released. He looked at him and asked curiously, Why do you always give in to me? You're my little emperor baby. What else can I do but accommodate you? Prince Mo said matter-of-factly, You like to shake off my hand when you're angry. I feel terrible. Your family is too annoying. Arbor suddenly stretched out his leg and kicked him. It's all your father's fault for marrying so many mistresses. They're always looking for trouble. Yes. It's not my fault. It's all my father's fault. Your stepmothers are all troublemakers. They're so annoying. Isn't that so? In the future, I won't enter the palace and won't see them. And your mother, look at me. My nose is not my nose and my eyes are not my eyes. It's not like I have to marry you. If it doesn't work, then even if, MMPH. Xiao Mu abruptly shut her mouth. Her small mouth that had been blabbering non-stop at Emolienne had already been overbearingly blocked by him. He didn't give her a chance to continue speaking. This kiss completely swallowed all of the little stoic's complaints. I'm telling you, I admit to all my mistakes, but you're not allowed to say things like, forget it, again. Emolienne angrily bit down hard on his lips. Arbor exclaimed, Were you born in the year of the dog? Emolienne raised his phoenix eyes and lifted her small chin with a finger. Chapter 850. Jojo, I can do anything you want. But this is the only thing I'm not allowed to do. You're mine. I won't allow you to leave me. His ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with deep meaning, as if there was an endless whirlpool spinning inside. 2 pitch-black lotus flames leaped in the depths of his eyes. Arbor stared blankly. She stared into his eyes, lost in thought. She touched them with her little hand and muttered to herself, Emolienne, your eyes. Emolienne couldn't bear to hear the little fellow say things like, forget it, and let's break up, with a stoic face. He didn't want her heart, which was firmly encased in a layer of ice, to shrink bit by bit again. My eyes are filled with you. He sighed softly. He reached out to grab her little paw and bit it lightly. This is your punishment for saying something you shouldn't have said. You're not allowed to say it again in the future. Arbor pulled her hand back and glared at him in annoyance. When she lowered her head, she saw little 15th staring at them curiously with wide eyes. Arbor felt even more awkward. You're so annoying. She pushed him away with a burning face. Your little sister is here. Sis. Emolienne's face immediately darkened. He glanced at the child. Wrong name. Call her sister-in-law. What did the child know about sister-in-law? He only felt that Prince Mo's face was dark and scary. He quickly shrank back into his sister's warm embrace and rubbed his face against her. His expression relaxed. Your dad has so many children, but he doesn't know how to take good care of them. Arbor was furious. What a scumbag of a father. Yes. Dad is useless. Jojo is the best. Arbor rolled her eyes at him. Where did your mother send this child? Emolienne paused for a moment, then said, She sent him to He Jiaoyi's place to take care of him. Duke Qing's current second wife, Madame He, is He Jiaoyi's paternal aunt. Doesn't she have a son of her own? Yes, 16 is a few months younger than 15. Oh, Arbor replied. Then, he said, starting tomorrow, bring her to my house every day. I will give her another 8 injections to completely cure her asthma and nurse her body back to health. Okay. Crown Prince Mo readily agreed upon hearing this, so happy that he could soar in his heart. Wasn't this exactly what he wanted? He could see his baby Chow every day. The two of them talked for a while, and Aber's mood calmed down a lot. He told him to go back to the king's palace first. The lunch banquet wasn't that big of a deal. The main event was still in the evening. That was a big play between the traditional eunuch aristocratic families and the new 8 aristocratic families. Aber was in the movie and couldn't get away. At noon, the New Year's banquet in the Brilliant Sun Hall finally went smoothly. The group of people obediently finished the banquet. On the surface, they were laughing and chatting happily. It seemed as if they had already forgotten all the embarrassing things that had happened early in the morning. Consort Zheng wasn't absent. No matter how angry she was, she still sat at the banquet and ate for a while without tasting her food. It was obvious that Consort Zheng's smile was a bit forced. She forced herself to sit there. In reality, it wasn't very interesting. The people around her were afraid of offending her and didn't dare to speak to her. For the first time, Consort Zheng experienced the feeling of being left out of the circle. A fire burned in her heart. As soon as the lunch banquet ended, she used Sephora Flower Palace as an excuse to hastily leave. Queen Zhao didn't stop her. She coldly glanced at her from the corner of her eye, and her lips hooked in a sneer. Chapter 851. After 1 o'clock in the afternoon, people from the 8 great aristocratic families would enter the palace one after another. The people from Luo family troupe were also let in from the side door at this time, preparing to start the show at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Everyone moved to Clearwater Fine Park. When the noblewomen heard that the Luo family troupe was invited this time, their faces instantly lit up with interest. Most of the noble ladies didn't like to watch shows, so the elders let the servant girls follow these ladies and let them stroll around Clearwater Fine Park on their own. The Luo family troupe was famous in the capital recently, especially before and after the New Year. When all the aristocratic families wanted to invite guests for banquets, they couldn't help but find some troupes to sing, perform acrobatics. Those smaller aristocratic families couldn't even invite the Luo family troupe. Aber naturally didn't have any interest in watching shows. When she asked Wei Ziqin had a look of disdain. Mother was born in the countryside and can't listen to these meaningless things. Furthermore, Wei Ziqin wasn't stupid. If she insisted on sitting among the noble ladies, she would most likely be disdained, so why would she bother to join in the fun? Then Mother, come back to the East Palace with us to rest. After the firecrackers last night, they didn't sleep well, so Aber wanted to go back to the East Palace in the afternoon to catch up on some sleep. The 3 of them walked out of Brilliant Sun Hall, but before they could take 2 steps, they saw 3 people coming towards them. Once they met, Wei Ziqin recognized that it was the wife of Imperial College's vice principal, Madame Zhuang. The 2 ladies behind her with refined manners were the great king's second concubine, Xu Quan, and the legitimate 4th young lady, Xu Hui. What Madame Zhuang was most proud of in her life were these 2 daughters. The older one was virtuous, marrying the great king's son. The husband and wife were loving and respectful to each other. The younger one was even more beautiful, and the older one was modest, polite, gentle, and filial. Ever since she reached marriageable age, matchmakers would step on her doorstep every day. Xu Hui was 18 this year and had reached the marriageable age. Recently, there were even signs that the queen had taken a fancy to her. If the Xu family's 4th young lady was conferred as the crown prince's concubine, it would be a great thing for the Xu family. Although she was only a concubine in name, she was still the crown prince. She was truly the apple of the eye of the great king, the queen, and the empress dowager. Moreover, the crown prince didn't even have a close confidant by his side. Their family's 4th young lady was such an intelligent person. If she entered the Eastern Palace, she would be able to enjoy the moonlight first. Would she be afraid that she wouldn't be able to gain favor? The mother and daughters of the Xu family were preparing to go to the theater in Qingshui Jiyuan, but they didn't expect to bump into the mother and daughter of the Qiao family who were just coming out. Madame Xu's expression instantly became somewhat unsightly. A few days ago, the crown princess refused to attend her eldest daughter's plum blossom banquet, which made her very unhappy. Deep down in his heart, he had already scolded him for being so shameless. Although Shu Quan persuaded her for a while, she was still a little angry. In addition, during the banquet in the morning, she had personally examined eldest young lady Chow's conduct and felt that this young lady was indeed from the countryside and didn't see the big picture. In the future, this kind of little girl was going to suppress her well-educated and well-mannered youngest daughter. No matter how she thought about it, she just couldn't accept it. If it wasn't for the great king suddenly issuing an imperial edict to confer eldest young lady Chow the title of crown princess, who knew who this crown princess position would be? Shu Quan saw that her mother had her head held high like a fighting cock and wanted to walk straight past the mother and daughters of the Chow family. She hurriedly tugged on her mother's sleeve and gently bowed towards Arbor. Crown Princess. Madam Chow. Second young lady Chow. Chapter 852. Since other people were polite, Arbor was naturally polite as well. He returned a half-bow and nodded. The great king's second consort. Madame Shu. Wei Ziqin took the initiative to greet Madame Zhuang. Madame Zhuang pretended to respond, her expression containing a bit of disdain. Ah, it's Madame Chow. Shu Quan forcefully tugged at her mother's clothes, her delicate and pretty face slightly sunk. She smoothed things over and smiled at the Chow family trio. We're just preparing to head to Clearwater Fine Park stage. Where is the crown princess going? Chow Lin pursed her lips, her childish nature rising as she deliberately said loudly, We're waiting for brother-in-law to pick us up. Lin, Wei Ziqin patted the back of her daughter's hand and pulled her to her side. She nodded slightly at Madame Zhuang, who had an unsightly expression. My daughter spoke without thinking. Please don't take offense. Madame Zhuang snorted and said with a fake smile, Then you guys can wait here properly. When His Highness is free, he'll come over to pick you guys up. Madame Shu especially emphasized the word, pick up, as if mocking the Chow family trio's wishful thinking. It was obvious that it was impossible. His Highness was still entertaining civil and military officials in the king's palace, so how could he have the time to come to Brilliant Sun Hall to pick up the three of them? To think that they could think of such a thing. Poor upbringing. The contempt in Madame Shu's eyes truly flowed out, and it was very glaring. Chow Lin's young and impetuous girl mentality immediately flared up. You really don't believe me? My brother-in-law will be here soon. Lin, Wei Ziqin saw that her daughter's temper had flared up, and her head was about to explode. She hastily reached out to hold her small hand. All right. Chow Lin just couldn't bear to see others belittle her mother. This Madame Shu was like a proud peacock, even looking at people with her nostrils. Mother. On the other end, Shu Quan was also extremely embarrassed. She continuously tugged at her mother's sleeve, but Madame Shu angrily flung her hand away. Humph. Madame Zhuang glanced at Chow Lin with displeasure. With a haughty expression, she said, Madame Chow, it's better to teach your daughter well from a young age. Look at our family's Shu Hui. Her etiquette and behavior all conform to the norms. Even Her Majesty the Queen praises her from time to time. If the second miss wants to find a good etiquette instructor, I have a good recommendation here. Otherwise, in another 2 years, when she gets older, she won't even be able to find a husband. Jolin's face turned red with anger. Wei Ziqin was so angry that her entire body trembled. Without another word, Arbor flew up and slapped Madame Shu's face. Ah! Madame Shu didn't expect that the crown princess would suddenly slap her. The sound of this slap immediately attracted a lot of attention. Madame Shu felt that she had completely lost all of her face. She was the wife of the vice principal of Imperial College and came from a scholarly family, yet she was embarrassed by the mother and daughter of the Chow family today. Arbor did not stop. Could a slap be enough? It didn't exist. She couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with this Madame Shu and directly gave her 2 more slaps. Madame Shu fell to the ground and started gasping for air. Her gaze was filled with terror. During the banquet in the morning, the crown princess had only exchanged a few words with Wu Hongma, and it was just that her aura was a little overbearing. When they really fought, no one could even think about interfering. Looking at the punches and kicks that were beating Madame Shu like a sandbag, which of the noblewomen passing by would dare to stop them? Chapter 853. You. Madame Shu barely managed to stabilize herself, and her face kept trembling. All the hair on Shu Quan's body stood on end, and she was so nervous that her fingers curled up slightly. She grabbed her mother, whose cheeks were swollen, and hurriedly apologized to Arbor. Crown Princess, sorry, my mother drank a bit too much at the New Year's banquet, and her mind is still a bit muddled. You're the one who drank too much. Madame Shu didn't appreciate the apology at all as she swatted her daughter's hand away. She pointed at Wei Ziqin and angrily said, "You're just a village woman, but your daughters are each more vulgar and barbaric than the other. Are you all dead? Why did you let the Crown Princess do it alone?" A cold rebuke sounded from behind the Chow family's mother and daughters. When this rebuke sounded, Shu Quan felt like her scalp was about to explode. The hidden guards who were secretly observing couldn't help but grumble and hurriedly rushed out. Without another word, they picked up Madame Shu, whose hair was disheveled and her hairpins were disheveled, and gave her a good beating. Madame Shu wailed incessantly, and the spectating madams and noble ladies were all dumbstruck. What's the use of having you follow the Crown Princess? You actually want the Crown Princess to do it herself. Mo Lien walked up with a cold expression. She turned to shoot a glance and hurriedly asked, "Mother, what's wrong? Who angered my mother to this extent?" The moment the Crown Prince finished speaking, the surroundings were dead silent. The madams and noble ladies who were originally watching the commotion all secretly groaned in their hearts, hating themselves for watching the commotion. "Your Highness." Fourth young Lady Shu Hui seemed to be panicking as she suddenly knelt down and pleaded for her mother with tears streaming down her face. Mother only quarreled with the Crown Princess's mother for a bit. It's nothing major. It was the Crown Princess who suddenly made a move. The Crown Prince's abrupt glance at her was really cold. Shu Hui's heart suddenly trembled. Her neck shrunk, and her pupils involuntarily dilated. Fourth younger sister. The great king's first consort shouted to stop her in disappointment. She hurriedly went forward to bow to the Crown Prince and said, "Your Highness, it was my mother who drank a bit too much at noon. Her mind was a bit muddled and she offended the Crown Princess. Please forgive her. My Lin is only 12 years old, but she's already been scolded for not being able to find a husband." Are these the words of a drunkard? Wei Ziqin was so angry that her whole body trembled. She had never seen such a fierce woman who would joke about her daughter's marriage. Shrew! The Crown Prince flew into a rage, and the surroundings suddenly became deathly silent. Why did great heroine Shu marry a shrew like you? Madame Shu was so scared that she was paralyzed on the ground. She had been beaten black and blue by Arbor and the others until her face was swollen and her eyes couldn't even be found. At this time, there was no other expression on her face. Shu Hui was also so scared that her whole body was trembling. She knelt there, not daring to move. Only Shu Quan braced herself and stepped forward. Your Highness, please be careful with your words. If the Crown Prince labeled her as a shrew, then her mother's life could be considered to have come to an end. At this time, Shu Quan truly regretted to the extreme. Why couldn't she restrain her mother, who didn't watch her mouth? Did her mother still think that she was dealing with those concubines in her own home? Someone come, chase Madame Shu and her party out. In the future, they're not allowed to enter the palace without special instructions. The Crown Prince shouted coldly, not leaving Madame Zhuang any face. In so many years of New Year's banquets, Madame Shu was the first person to be chased out by the Crown Prince's order. In the future, how was Madame Shu supposed to go out and meet people? Madame Zhuang was paralyzed on the ground. How could she be willing to leave? Chapter 854. Madame Shu cried until her snot and tears were plastered on her face. At this moment, her image was completely destroyed. 2 eunuchs stepped forward and directly picked her up from the ground. Placing their arms around her, they carried her out of Brilliant Sun Hall. Madame Shu kicked her legs and screamed incessantly. This commotion was so loud that Queen Zhao could no longer pretend not to hear. Queen Zhao walked over with elderly Nanny Huaxian, Green Mammy, and several palace maids. Seeing this situation, she couldn't help but feel a headache. "Your Majesty the Queen, Your Majesty the Queen." Madame Shu struggled on her deathbed and wanted to pounce on the Queen, but she was firmly held down by the 2 eunuchs. "Crown Prince, what are you doing?" Actually, Queen Zhao had long known that the Crown Princess and Shu family's mother and daughter were at odds, but she wanted to see how powerful the Shu family's mother and daughter were. Now, it looked like they had suffered a crushing defeat and were completely not a match for the Qiao family's mother and daughter. To be precise, they were no match for the Crown Princess. "Take her away." The Crown Prince waved his hand impatiently, and Queen Zhao didn't stop him. Just like this, everyone looked on helplessly as the beggar-like Madame Shu was dragged away while screaming. Shu Hui's small face couldn't help but turn ghastly pale. She couldn't leave or stay in place, so she pitifully raised her head to look at Queen Zhao. "Throw her away as well." The Crown Prince pointed at the pale-faced Shu Hui. Queen Zhao's expression changed. "My royal son." Prince Amo turned to look at Empress Zhao with an angry expression. He directly said, "Royal Mother, if this son's daughter-in-law is wronged in your Brilliant Sun Hall every time, then this son won't dare to bring her here in the future." Queen Zhao's expression was angry, and she couldn't help but feel anxious. Nonsense. How did Royal Mother let her be wronged? Wasn't it just a few words with the Shu family's mother and daughter? It's all a misunderstanding. This Crown Princess was too delicate. Empress Zhao was displeased. Madame Shu pointed at my mother's nose and scolded my younger sister for not being able to marry. "Does the Queen want to hear it with your own ears?" Auber asked coldly. Queen Zhao's heart skipped a beat as she inwardly scolded Madame Shu for not knowing how to conduct herself. She forced a smile and said, "Crown Princess, you've been wronged. Muhu will definitely make it up to you." Auber said coldly, "There's no need for compensation. I only hope that Your Majesty the Queen will punish Madame Shu properly so that she won't be a frog in a well who doesn't know how high the sky is. Imperial Mother, issue an edict and send an etiquette instructor to Madame Shu. Let her relearn etiquette and rules for 3 months so that she won't boast about how well-mannered she is." Prince Amo grabbed Empress Zhao's arm and shook it. Empress Zhao looked at her son helplessly. If she were to issue such a decree, it would make everyone in the capital laugh at Madame Shu. Madame Shu had always boasted that she had taught a pair of outstanding girls. However, she herself had to learn the rules from the new when she was old. This was truly ironic. However, if he didn't listen to his son today, it seemed like he wouldn't be able to let go of his resentment. After weighing the pros and cons, Empress Zhao still felt that her son was more important. She was afraid that her precious son really wouldn't come to the Brilliant Sun Hall in the future, so she issued an edict to the Shu family. When the bruised and battered Madame Shu received this edict, she was like a bolt from the blue. How she would throw a tantrum and hang herself would be a story for another day. When the night banquet arrived, Auber, who was in high spirits after a good night's sleep, followed Prince Mo into Clearwater Fine Park. The night fell rather early in the winter. The luminous pearls among the flowers were all lit up, illuminating the surroundings in a blur. Crown Princess has arrived. Following the announcement, everyone from the 8 great patrician families in the bright main hall uniformly looked towards the entrance. Chapter 855. So many pairs of eyes simultaneously cast their gazes on the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Friendly, admiring, hostile, and probing gazes intersected. 2 hidden forces even stealthily charged at the 2 of them in an instant. If one's willpower was weak, they would definitely stagger from the hidden force. That would be a breach of etiquette in front of the court and also a disadvantage in front of the 8 great patrician families. Unfortunately, the one they wanted to plot against was the Crown Prince, a figure with a cultivation as deep as the sea. Thus, 2 figures rapidly bounced away from their seats with 2 soft, chi-chi sounds of rebounding force. The cushions under their butts instantly exploded with 2 bang-bang sounds, and cotton fluff flew all over the floor. Ordinary people looked over in confusion, but cultivators were inwardly alarmed. It was 2 members of the Hong family who acted to test them. Mo Lien already knew their identities with a glance. Previously, because of Hong Yaowei's incident, he had already ordered people to gather information on all the members of the Hong estate. These 2 people were the 2 sons of the Hong family's eldest branch, Hong Riwei and Hong Daowei. Suddenly, a burst of laughter was heard. Duan Yu tilted his head and looked at the 2 disheveled members of the Hong family across 5 or 6 tables. He clicked his tongue and said, "Oh my, you want to plot against people with such lousy cultivation? Go hide where you can." With that, Hong Riwei and Hong Daowei's faces instantly turned the color of pig liver. Mo Lien coldly glanced at the 2 members of the Hong family. Holding Arba's hand, she walked forward. Along the way, they had to pass by the seats of the court officials and the 8 great patrician families. On the left were the court officials and their families. On the right were the 8 great patrician families. Of course, the 8 great patrician families' seating arrangements were also particular. The Talisman patrician family, the Mu clan, the Concealed Weapons and Scouting patrician family, the Duan clan, and the Elixir patrician family, the Qin estate, followed by the medical-famed Dou clan, the Smelting and Mining patrician families, the Wu clan, and the Hong clan. The Forging patrician families, the Fan clan and the Chao clan, were at the bottom. That's right, it was the Chao clan. In her previous life, the Chao clan's main family was considered one of the great patrician families. When Chao Dongbua, the head of the main family, saw Chao Zhongbong and his family, he came forward to greet them. Chao Zhongbong didn't look any better. When Chao Dongbua saw Arba, he immediately stood up from his seat in excitement. However, before he could start exchanging pleasantries with Chao Mu, he was thoroughly interrupted by the Hong brothers' sudden probing. Arba's cold gaze swept past Chao Dongbua without stopping for a moment. She knew almost all of the people from the Chao family, but she didn't want to talk to any of them. All of a sudden, Arba's gaze fell on the people beside Chao Dongbua. To be more precise, it was locked onto a 23-year-old man who wore a white robe and had a gentle smile on his face. Her aura changed in an instant. It was so sudden that it was hard for Prince Mo not to notice it. Her footsteps stopped just like this, so Mo Lien naturally stopped as well. Following her gaze, he met a young man who was nodding slightly with a smile on his lips. Just like that, Chao Mu's icy gaze fixated on that man, staring fixedly at him. This abnormal deep gaze attracted the attention of everyone around them, even the king and queen who were sitting far away on the chief seats in the main hall. The white-robed young man stood up with a smile and bowed to the 2 of them. Chapter 856. Duan Yu tilted his head and glanced at Arba in a slight daze. Miss Chao's gaze was too focused, right? It truly made one feel displeased. The 2 young masters sitting next to Duan Yu were the Qin estate's 2 young masters. At this time, eldest young Master Qin was propping up his chin with one hand and looking at his younger brother with a slightly tilted head, asking with his eyes, "Is that right?" Young Master Omega Kotoku pursed his lips tightly and didn't say a word. Eldest young Master Qin's brows suddenly relaxed, and he smiled. Seeing his younger brother's displeased appearance, he was 100% sure. That Mu Xiaobao who suddenly disappeared from the Qin estate and left behind a fake name was definitely this crown princess in front of him. Tesketeske. Mu Xiaobao's appearance had truly changed greatly after not seeing him for so many days. It made one's eyes light up. Oh, facial paralysis was still facial paralysis. This was truly a signature mark, so it was very easy to recognize. Arba stopped in front of the white-robed youth. After that youth finished bowing, he still didn't move. What was going on? The crown princess's gaze was too piercing. The youth's gentle smile was almost unable to be maintained. Because of Arba's gaze, all kinds of gazes gathered on him. Even though the youth was calm, he couldn't resist several piercing gazes. Fan Chioha. Abba murmured before suddenly smiling without warning. That voice was so soft and cute that it bordered on ravings. When his smile blossomed, it was like a flower blooming on a precipitous snowy peak. F***ck. The Crown Prince and Duan Yu's hearts were probably like this. Chow Chow actually looked at a strange man and smiled. The Crown Prince's piercing gaze was like a tangible blade that landed on the white-robed youth. On the other side, Duan Yu, the two young masters of the Qin family, Second Do, Sixth Zheng, and the others' gazes all converged on Fan Qiuhe. If gazes could cut him, Fan Qiuhe felt that he would have already been cut apart by those young masters' gazes. Ha ha ha. Crown Princess, you've gone overboard. Fan Qiuhe's smile froze on his lips. Although he had to admit that the little girl in front of him was too beautiful, when she smiled at him, even if he was a hothead, his heart couldn't help but ripple. But smiling at him now was the same as roasting him on a bonfire. Look at the looks in the eyes of the people around him. They must have the heart to eat him. The great king sat upright, and Empress Zhao pursed her lips tightly. The family members of the important officials of the court were also whispering to each other. In this silence, Qiao Mu's figure suddenly moved. She nimbly leaped forward and kicked the short table in front of Fan Qiuhe under everyone's stupefied gazes. Emolienne was caught off guard. The corner of her eyes twitched. She had never thought that the little guy would cough. Suddenly rushing up and smashing. This was simply unexpected. The wine cup in eldest young Sachin's hand rolled onto the small table with a clang, and a trace of disbelief appeared in his amorous eyes. She really hit him as soon as she started. In contrast to himself, who had been slapped by the little guy in private, and then looking at Fan Qiuhe, who was currently in a sorry state in public, eldest young Sachin suddenly guffawed. Sure enough, there was no worst in this world. Ha ha ha. Fan Qiuhe was forced to retreat by Aber's sudden kick, but he couldn't resist that short table that flipped a few times in the air and ruthlessly smashed at his feet. Chapter 857. The soup spilled on their feet and even affected the two Fan family members beside them. They jumped to their feet, their expressions filled with shock. But this wasn't the end. The little fellow directly pulled out her ferrule and threw a streak of fire at Fan Qiuhe. With a sizzle, the streak of fire tunneled under Fan Qiuhe's feet like a wriggling snake and was about to climb up his leg. Fan Qiuhe was greatly alarmed, and he hastily activated his defensive barrier to defend against this streak of fire. Everyone only heard a sizzle and saw that a corner of Fan Qiuhe's robe had already been set ablaze by the raging fire. That fire was so powerful that it burned the hem of Fan Qiuhe's robe to ashes with just a touch. Fan Qiuhe promptly tore off his outer robe and flung it to the ground before retreating several steps. At this time, the defensive mystic weapon in his hand had already been activated and enveloped his entire body. When he looked up again, that smiling face could no longer be maintained, and his entire face turned a kind of fecal yellow. The Crown Princess's body was as light as a swallow as she tapped on the overturned table with one foot and chased after him like a shadow. She raised her ferrule high and angrily shouted, "Furious Dragon Slash!" Monstrous waves of mystic energy erupted from her body and condensed on the ferrule, forming a dragon-headed mystic energy vortex that smashed down at his head. F***ck. Everyone was crying on the inside. Wasn't this a freaking banquet for the 8 great patrician families? Why was the opening so explosive? The great king and Empress Zhao, who were sitting at the head seats in the main hall, felt their eyelids twitch repeatedly as this move was about to land on the Fan family brat's head. The great king anxiously jumped up from the dragon throne and hastily shouted, "Crown Princess!" Boom! The attack that contained the powerful strength of a level 12 mystic cultivator heavily smashed onto Fan Qiuhe's defensive mystic weapon. Fan Qiuhe only felt the qi and blood in his chest churning, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Fortunately, the defensive mystic weapon blocked more than half of the attack for him. Otherwise, the consequences would be unthinkable. What exactly did this crown prince consort who tried to kill her the moment they met want? Fan Qiuhe's gaze trembled, and the defensive barrier on his body abruptly cracked and was destroyed in an instant. He barely moved the corners of his mouth, trying to show a decent smile. But at this moment, He really couldn't bring himself to laugh. Abba suddenly swung his arm, and the Fan and Chow family members who were originally dodging to the side because of the battle cried out, and they all took a step back in horror. A small green-blue chick flew toward Fan Choha with a swoosh. Suddenly, it spread its wings and revealed its huge true body. It cried out loudly at Fan Choha. Chapter 858. Her mystic energy seemed to be burning fiercely in her body, raging with anger. Abra's surrounding temperature dropped sharply, and in a short time, the people around her enjoyed the feeling of falling into an ice cellar. The little girl in front of him seemed to have torn open the gates of hell with her own hands. She was standing under the yellow springs of the 9th level of hell, tilting her head and smiling at you with treacherous eyes. Emolien only felt that his heart seemed to be frozen numb. He seemed to be able to see layers of thick ice rapidly spreading around the little girl's body, enclosing her in it. Blue Luan spread its wings and roared at Fan Choha, who was close by. Fan Choha stretched out his hands defensively and crossed them in front of his forehead. He thought that a wave of ice water would naturally fall from his head, but after waiting for a long time, nothing happened. Fan Choha carefully released his hands and looked in shock at Arbor, who had floated in front of him like a ghost. Crown Princess. Fan Choha almost fell on his butt. Do you see this dagger? Arbor calmly summoned an ordinary dagger from her inner world and stroked it over and over again as if she was caressing her beloved artifact. There was even a trace of demonic light emitted from his pupils. She suddenly aimed the dagger at Fan Choha's heart. Hey! Crown Princess! Although Fourth Elder's arms were frozen stiff, he still shouted in time and flashed to Fan Choha's side. Don't worry, I'm very patient. Xiao Mu pressed the ice-cold dagger in her hand against Fan Choha's cheek, and her small face that was as fair as jade also drew closer. She looked at Fan Choha's abruptly widening eyes up close and whispered softly into his ear, "You won't die so easily. Just like me in the past, crawling and crawling in the dark, like a stinking, rotting corpse. I lost my limbs and could only use my head and body, like a pitiful, trembling, and weak little reptile. Ha 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 ha. I will definitely give you an unforgettable death." Her voice sounded neither close nor distant in Fan Choha's ear, almost like a dream. It was so soft that it made his heart tremble. Fan Choha suddenly felt the dagger on his cheek withdraw. Jojo. Prince suddenly reached out and pulled her into his arms. Only then did the bone-chilling cold that felt as if his entire body had fallen into an abyss disappear. Abba turned around and blinked her beautiful watery eyes. The strange expression on her face gradually faded away, and it gradually returned to that rigid, paralyzed face. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. After witnessing the Crown Princess angrily scolding Princess Anam and beating up Madame Shu in the morning, the noble ladies and young misses were already used to it. Their expressions weren't as strange as the court officials. The Fan clan of the 8 great clans is only a so. You hit the young one, and the old one can't wait to take the hit. Abba curled his lips and sneered. The faces of those from the Fan clan were naturally extremely unsightly. Various colors appeared on their faces. Ha ha. The great king heaved a sigh of relief and couldn't help but let out 2 awkward chuckles. He coughed and said, "The Crown Princess, is young and impetuous, so it's indeed inappropriate for her to exchange blows with others." Cough. She's young, she's young. It's inevitable that she won't entertain you well. Everyone from the Fan clan, please don't take it to heart. Sit, all of you sit. Bull ****. Anger appeared on the faces of those from the Fan clan. The Crown Princess had clearly used a killing move just now. Chapter 859. Killer move, got it? A killer move was a move that could kill people anytime and anywhere. The great king actually spouted nonsense about how the Crown Princess was young and impetuous and liked to spar with people. Freaking exchanging blows and learning from each other, so she hated that she couldn't take people's lives everywhere, right? Ah ha ha ha. The great king was still laughing awkwardly as he greeted everyone from the Fan family. It wasn't until Empress Zhao cast him a glance and ordered a junior royal maid to replace the low table in front of the Fan family that the great king realized that the tables in front of Fan Shoha and the others had either been kicked over by the crown princess or shattered by the crown princess' mystic energy. Ah ha ha. The great king could only continue to laugh awkwardly to cover up his awkwardness. Cough cough. This freaking oddball crown princess. She kept biting onto young Master Fan the moment she entered. It was simply too baffling. She caused him to feel awkward all the time. Jojo, are you hurt? Prince Emo led Arbor back to their seats as if no one else was present and pulled over her small hand to repeatedly examine it. Arbor shook her small head and reached out to stroke the little chick lying in her arms. The two people were seated at the head of the officials. Mu Qianqian and her mother's table was behind the Mu family's patriarch, Mu Boming. It could be said that with her father's back across, she was practically facing the crown prince and Arbor. Her eyes were practically spitting out blazing flames of jealousy. On what basis? A rural village girl was actually able to obtain His Highness the Crown Prince's favor and inexplicably rise to become the Crown Princess. When she recalled how the Crown Prince punished this B*TCH at the small banquet before the new year and slapped her until her mouth was rotten, Mu Qianqian's soft young girl heart couldn't help but ache and shatter. Why did His Highness the Crown Prince treat Qianqian like this? Everyone, we are fortunate enough to be gathered here today to allow us to admire the heroes of the 8 great patrician families. Let us first drink a cup to all of you heroes. Only then did the 8 great clans and the civil and military officials stand up and say, "Thank you, Your Majesty." The great king gestured for everyone to sit down and said with a smile, "I heard that the Mu family's head's talisman drawing technique is very good. The peace talisman that you made can seek good luck and avoid calamities. It can also save a person's life at a critical moment. As soon as it appears in the Chamber of Commerce, it will be sold out." The great king is too kind. Mu Boming looked like he was in his early 30s, but his actual age was 50. The great king looked at him with envy in his eyes. Take a look at the 50-year-old man, and look at yourself. You're only 2 or 3 years older than him, but you can't compare at all in terms of looks. The Mu clan was indeed a large aristocratic family. They must have some kind of talisman or something like that in the dark. The great king let his imagination run wild. It wasn't until Empress Zhao coughed lightly that he came back to his senses. He looked down and saw that Mu Boming was handing over a brocade pouch. "Ah, quickly present it," the great king hastily urged. Gong Chong and bowed and walked down the steps. He picked up the brocade pouch that Mu Boming handed over with both hands and hurried to the great king to hand it over. Mu Boming said with a smile, "It's just a small token of appreciation. These are 2 high-level peace talismans that this Mu personally drew. After activating the talismans with a drop of blood, it can guarantee that evil spirits won't dare to advance for 7 days and nights. It can seek good luck and avoid calamities, and it can eliminate any forbidden technique or curse cast by a cursecaster. This is specially presented to His Majesty and Her Majesty the Queen." As soon as Mu Boming said this, faint joy immediately appeared on the great king and queen's faces. The royal concubines around them, including Consort Zhang, all looked at them with envy. Chapter 860. That was a protective talisman that was hard to find even in peaceful times, let alone now. It was said that if one carried a protective talisman made by Great Master Mu on their person, no evil beings or ghosts would dare to approach them. Otherwise, they would be pulverized by the protective talisman's talisman energy. The great king and the queen had both heard the crown prince mention before that a curse practitioner had appeared in the Mo kingdom capital. Now that Mu Boming was so tactful, gifting 2 protective talismans that could dispel forbidden curses, it could be said that he had done it at the perfect time. He simply won the hearts of the great king and the queen. "Family head Mu, this is a very good move." The great king nodded with a chuckle. "Someone come quickly. We want to reward family head Mu generously." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Mu Boming bowed neither obsequiously nor haughtily. "Jojo, how is that talisman?" The crown prince pressed against Aba's ear and asked in a small voice. "It's not very good," Aba said indifferently, her small hands fidgeting about as she sprinkled a spoonful of minced meat into her small bowl of soup. "I'll get it for you." Seeing her two small hands fidgeting about, the crown prince hurriedly brought the bowl over for her while secretly asking, "Is that really an advanced-level protective talisman?" "It is." Aba fidgeted with her small hands as she said indifferently, "But the intermediate-level blue protective talisman that I drew with ebony can last for 12 days after it's activated. Do you want it?" Aba took the small soup bowl from his hand and poked at it with a spoon before taking a sip. "It's just that it's not very useful." Prince Mo nodded repeatedly. Aba took out 2 talismans from her inner world and tossed them to him. "I drew it for fun." Emolien looked at her with a grin. "Jojo, you're better at drawing than family head Mu even for fun." Aba glanced sideways at Mu Boming. Seeing that he had already returned to his seat after offering the talismans, she said neutrally, "Family head Mu's talisman drawing skills are pretty good. I just had a little more fortuitous encounter than them." If it weren't for the golden talisman Jade Tome's extensive collection of talisman techniques, allowing her to guide her from time to time, she would only be a rookie talisman master if she were to study in that talisman clan. Thinking of this, he felt a sense of gratitude towards this ancient book in his heart. The corners of Emolien's lips curled up slightly. His mood finally improved a little. Looking at the little girl beside him, who had returned to her original state, his heart, which had been tightly clenched, finally relaxed a little. Chow Chow herself might not be aware of it, but she was truly a little frightening just now. Those pitch-black eyes were filled with thick black mist. When she stared at Fan Chioha, no one would think that she was joking. This humble one has heard that 10 days after the Spring Lantern Festival, the 8 great clans will have a competition. That's right. Mu Boming smiled. Chao Dongbua, who had been in a state of excitement, had been looking at her in shock and surprise since the beginning of the fight in Arba. It wasn't until now that Chao Dongbua abruptly calmed down from his excitement. If the Chao clan's main branch obtained such a heaven-bestowed genius, why would they fear not winning the competition between the 8 great clans after the Spring Lantern Festival? Chao Dongbua stood up, beaming with joy, and cupped his hands at the Great King. "Great King, this humble one is Chao Dongbua, the head of the Chao clan. The Crown Princess's maternal uncle." His words caused an uproar. Everyone couldn't help but turn to look at the unsightly expressions of Chao Zhongbang and Wei Ziqin before curiously shifting their gazes to the Crown Princess. Mo Lien's expression also darkened. He had long heard about how Chao Zhongbang and his wife were rejected when they went to the main branch after moving to the capital. He didn't expect that the main branch's patriarch would be so shameless as to shamelessly come to acknowledge his relatives at this New Year's banquet where the 8 great clans were gathered. Chapter 861. Evidently, the Great King was unaware of this situation. He was startled for a moment before replying with a chuckle, "Marquis of Jiyuan, we have never heard you mention that your main family is the capital's Chao family." Chao Zhongbang stood up with a trace of anger between his brows. Unfortunately, before he could speak, Chao Dongbua snatched the thread of conversation. Precisely. We can't write 2 Chao characters in one stroke. Previously, because the servants were incompetent, the Marquis misunderstood the main family. Actually, the Chao family's main family very much welcomes the Marquis's family's return. With the Crown Princess's cultivation and strength, she doesn't need to participate in the clan competition and can immediately enter the clan's martial arts hall to study. After the Lantern Festival, we hope the Crown Princess can represent our Chao family in battle. Chao Dongbua's face blossomed into a chrysanthemum-like smile, causing all the wrinkles on his face to sway. Chao Zhongbang snorted before turning to the Great King and cupping his hands. Reporting to the Great King, this subject was merely a farmer in the past and has already severed ties with the Chao family's main family for more than a decade. Now that family head Chao is bringing up this old matter again, it is unavoidably as if you are trying to claim kinship. Chao Dongbua's face twitched, and he couldn't resist retorting angrily, "How can blood ties be severed so easily? You will be old Chaos for one day." You will be old chows for the rest of your lives. Shameless old thing. Duan you harumphed. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this black-hearted patriarch of the old Chow family clearly wanted to bring their family's JoJo back because of her astonishing talent. Participate in the competition? He really dared to say such a thing. He was truly shameless. Aber looked on coldly from the sidelines and didn't say a word. He held her small soup bowl and drank the meat soup spoonful by spoonful. Chow Zhongbong forcefully flung his sleeve. Family head Chow, please conduct yourself with dignity. Chow Domba's face turned green from anger, and he jumped up and shouted angrily, Eldest nephew, you aren't being kind by doing this. Empress Zhao sat in the great hall with her mouth tightly pursed. She coldly stared at the people of the Chow estate as a trace of disgust involuntarily crept into her heart. Chow Domba's eldest son, Chow Zhongda, sneered, Dad, what do you have to say to this kind of people who forget their ancestry? He's the kind of person who could harden his heart and throw me into a dilapidated temple to be exposed to the wind and rain. Wei Zichin's heart thumped. Today, all the officials of the third rank and above were gathered, and the 8 great aristocratic families were all present. If this black-hearted Chow Dongba really came up with some kind of reputation of forgetting one's ancestry, then who knew what kind of rumors would spread about their family's old Chow in the capital tomorrow? Sure enough, as soon as Chow Zhongbong said this, the entire hall was filled with gasps, and the gazes everyone shot at Chow Zhongbong carried a trace of surprise. After all, in this day and age, even the great king constantly talked about filial piety, and the entire nation advocated filial piety. How could a person who didn't even have the basic filial piety talk about loyalty and righteousness? If they walked on the streets, they would be pointed at and cursed behind their backs. Mo Lien put down the cup in her hand, and her phoenix eyes coldly swept over Chow Zhongda. If you're talking about old lady Chow, then that's a coincidence. This prince can testify that old lady Chow was the one who made a fuss and insisted on leaving the marquis's estate with her youngest son and youngest daughter-in-law. What's the problem with this? What's with the dilapidated temple? Chow Zhongda's entire body couldn't help but tense up when Mo Lien's cold gaze swept over him. The man in front of him had a trace of terrifying deterrence in his eyes, as if he only needed a cold gaze to kill him by 1,000 cuts. Chapter 862. Yes, death by 1,000 cuts, that's how terrifying it was. Chow Zhongda's body couldn't help but tremble. He stood up and forced himself to say, Your Highness, Chow Zhongda isn't lying. The day before yesterday, my father brought my aunt back from the run-down temple. My aunt was so miserable that she didn't even look human anymore. Anyone with the slightest bit of sympathy wouldn't be able to bear to see her like that, right? Oh. Mo Lien pretended to be puzzled and asked, This prince was also there that day. Old Madame Chow cried and made a fuss about leaving with her son and daughter-in-law. So the old madam actually went to stay the night in the run-down temple? Why was that? F***ck. Chow Zhongda wanted to curse in his heart. Wasn't His Highness clearly trying to shield the family? What do you mean by why? What other reason could there be for staying in a run-down temple? They had no money, no food, no houses, nothing at all. What other reason could there be? Otherwise, why would people stay in a run-down temple when they had a nice big house to live in? That day, my father-in-law and mother-in-law tried their best to persuade the old madam to stay, but the old madam insisted on leaving with her youngest son. Our dear Mo Lien's ability to lie through his teeth gradually deepened, and he shook his head regretfully as he said, We also had no other choice. We had no choice but to have elderly lady and her youngest son move out to live outside. The whole thing was actually quite simple. The main thing was that the old madam's youngest son was too much of a good-for-nothing. When Prince Mo said this, his entire face became solemn and his expression seemed a bit cold. That couple came knocking on our door that day and insisted that father-in-law hand over the position of marquis and give up the big house. They also wanted mother-in-law to give up the title of nobility to their daughter-in-law. How could they do that? Everyone in the main hall, men and women, old and young, all revealed an incredulous expression. Aber was sipping his soup and almost choked when he heard this. He lowered his head and silently drank his soup while secretly reaching out to tug at Prince Mo's collar. That's enough. If you continue to argue like this, it'll sound fake. Prince Mo's expression was especially solemn as he stood up and bowed to his imperial father. Imperial father, this son has never seen such a shameless person. They even dragged your father-in-law and mother-in-law into the palace and threatened to have you confer a new title of Marquis and Madam. The old great king was dumbfounded. Not to mention the great king and the other courtiers. Even Qiao Zhongbang and his wife were dumbfounded. Is that so? They were all present that day as well. Had such a strange thing happened before? The couple looked at each other speechlessly. My son-in-law is really good at making up lies. Father, I was so angry that I chased them out in your name. The old great king was speechless. This son of his had never not cheated his father since he was young. He already knew this, but there were so many courtiers and people from the 8 great aristocratic families. Was it really okay for him to cheat his father like this? Imperial father, do you think we should chase away people who disrespected elder brother and the great king? Yes. The old great king nodded. Should we not let them step into the Marquis' estate for the rest of their lives? Yes. Yes. The old great king weakly responded. He actually wanted to ask, what did this trivial family matter of old Qiao have to do with him? Many thanks, Imperial father. Crown Prince Mo straightforwardly curtsied to his old dad before turning to wink at his Qiao Qiao. He then turned to ask Qiao Zhongde, you heard everything, right? Chapter 863. What did he hear? Qiao Zhongde was dumbfounded as he silently looked at the crown prince. It was the great king's intention to chase that heartless and unscrupulous youngest son and daughter-in-law out of the Marquis' estate. Did you not understand? Emo Lien swept her gaze over Qiao Zhongde like she was looking at an idiot. Qiao Zhongde silently shut his mouth. As for elderly Lady Qiao, as I said before, she has hands and feet and is a living person herself. Who can stop her from going wherever she wants to? Prince Mo dryly glanced at Qiao Zhongde. As for why they lived in the run-down temple, Emo Lien paused and blinked with a spurious smile. Perhaps it's a personal hobby. Perhaps elderly lady got tired of living in a large house and wanted a change of environment? Pfft. Duan Yu spat out a mouthful of wine. In exchange, he received an irritated glare from Emo Lien. Qiao Zhongde was so infuriated that his eyes, nose, and mouth were practically all crooked. What an outlandish argument. So there were actually people in this world who disliked living in a large house and especially wanted a change of environment to live in a run-down temple that was exposed to the sun and rain? The great king, who habitually supported his son, also coughed softly and nodded. The crown prince's words are not without reason. Reason my ass. Qiao Dongbu's face was also contorted from anger, and his hands were plastered to the sides of his robe as a sneer hung on his lips. In that case, it really is that punk Qiao Zhonghing and his wife who don't know what's good for them. But Zhongbang Qiao Dongbu turned his face away and said earnestly, no matter what, even if the bones are broken, the tendons are still connected, especially your mother. You don't know how pitiful she looked that day when we went to the run-down temple to bring your mother out. Exalted great king. Duan Yu suddenly lifted his robe and stood up with cupped hands, interrupting Qiao Dongbu's words with a smile. Today is the day that the 8 great patrician families are gathered. We didn't come here to listen to family trifles and wails. If family head Qiao really wants to resolve the family's mundane affairs in this audience hall, then why not use us cultivators' methods to resolve conflicts? Mu Boming asked with a smile, Fourth young Master Duan, I wonder what you're referring to when you say that cultivators use methods to resolve conflicts. Fist. Duan Yu shook his fist and said with a grin, instead of being so wishy-washy, why don't we have a good fight? Qiao Dongbu's face was dark and gloomy, and he used a terrifying gaze to stare at the handsome youth who had abruptly interrupted him. Just now, he felt that Qiao Zhongbang's eyes had clearly wavered when he heard about old Madame Qiao's tragic situation. He felt that he had a chance of persuading Qiao Zhongbang to return to the Qiao family's ancestral home to see his mother. Unfortunately, this brat who popped out of nowhere suddenly spoiled everything. Family head Chow, why are you staring at me like this? Do you want to have a match with me? Duan Yu's eager expression made Chow Donghua's teeth ache. He would have to be crazy to compete with this kid. Why would he, the dignified family head of the Chow family, have a match with a junior from the Duan family? It wouldn't be surprising if he won, but it would be even more humiliating if he lost. He would have to be crazy to compete with this Duan family brat. Duan Yu blinked and looked at Chow Donghua with a disappointed expression. Family head Chow, you actually don't dare to compete with me. When Chow Donghua heard this, he couldn't help but jump up from his seat, the veins on his head nearly bursting. Brat, speak properly and don't babble nonsense. Grandfather, he's scary. It'll be 11 o'clock soon. I'll try to adjust the update time to daytime tomorrow. Chapter 864. Duan Yu abruptly turned his head to look at the elderly man in his 60s drinking tea. The elderly man's hair stood on end like steel needles. His eyes were hale and hearty, and his body was robust. His voice was as loud as a bell when he opened his mouth. Slap. The elderly man slapped the teacup under his palm, instantly shattering it into pieces. Chow Donghua shuddered for no reason, and his gaze shrunk slightly. Crap, how did he provoke this difficult old thing? Chow Donghua, you dare to yell at my good grandson? Duan Zhenqing questioned angrily like an enraged lion, about to pounce and rip Chow Donghua's throat apart. Chow Donghua involuntarily retreated a few steps and awkwardly smiled at Old Master Duan. Elderly Patriarch Duan, my apologies, my apologies. My attitude earlier was a bit too extreme. Duan Zhenqing harumphed and slapped the table hard, his voice reverberating like a drum. My good grandson wants to compete with you because he thinks highly of you. Why aren't you making a move? Chow Donghua's aged face instantly flushed red. What the F***ck did Old Master mean? He really wanted him to spar with the Duan family's brat. That immature brat from the Duan family was so excited and eager to give it a try. He even started swinging his arms and legs on the spot, looking like a rash youth who had never sparred with anyone before. He looked foolish. If he hit him too hard, Old Master Duan would lose face. If he hit him too lightly, he wouldn't be willing. I'll spar with you. Chow Zhongde abruptly stood up from his side and angrily declared, You don't have the right to spar with my dad. Old Master Duan's aged face darkened at once. He exerted some force in his hand and shattered the short table in front of him with a boom. Punk, who are you saying doesn't have the right? Old Master Duan roared. The great king's eye twitched, and he looked at the queen sitting upright beside him. Queen, did you prepare a few more tables? Seeing that Old Master Duan's fiery temper was about to erupt, Chow Donghua hastily stopped his son and smiled apologetically. Old Master, my son is insensible. All right. Duan Yu responded crisply and abruptly stretched out his long legs, directly jumping over the small table to the center of the main hall. He crooked his finger at Chow Zhongde with a sly smile. Don't cry if you lose, tortoise. Brat, you're courting death. Without waiting for Chow Donghua to stop him, Chow Zhongde was already like an enraged elephant, furiously stomping on the main hall's stone bricks as he madly dashed toward Duan Yu. His fist, accompanied by an explosive roar, was already in front of Duan Yu's eyes. Some of the more timid daughters of officials had already reached out their hands to cover their eyes. They couldn't bear to see such an elegant and peerless young master being ruthlessly rammed out like a bull. Only a loud boom sound could be heard in his ears. Chow Mu peeked out of the corner of her eye and saw her eldest uncle from the Chow clan's main family tumbling several times in the air before being sent flying by a huge force. He crashed ruthlessly out of the main hall, and she reckoned that he would probably smash a shallow hole in the limestone bricks outside the main hall. The great king and empress Zhao met each other's eyes before silently shifting their gazes to that Duan family's fourth young master. This Duan family's fourth young master abruptly stopped smiling, and his beautiful peach blossom eyes were filled with a thunderous fury. He abruptly turned to shout at old Master Duan, "Grandfather, grandfather! He insulted me! He actually sent a minor level 6 mystic cultivator to spar with me. He insulted me! He's insulting you!" Duan Zhenxing, didn't you already know that Qiao Zhongde was a minor level 6 mystic cultivator before the fight? Chapter 865. You clearly wanted to beat him to death, yet you still found an excuse to say that he was insulting you. Even an oddball grandfather like Duan Zhenxing couldn't help blushing from his grandson's shameless words. Ah ha ha ha. The great king suddenly let out an awkward laugh. Heroes truly come from the youth. Fourth young master Duan's cultivation is astonishing and very formidable. Today, we have truly broadened our horizons. Ha 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 ha. Qiao Zhongde's second brother, Qiao Zhonghao, had already helped his older brother inside the main hall. Qiao Zhongde's face was bruised and swollen from the fall, and he probably lost a few teeth. He was currently leaning on his brother with a dispirited expression and didn't even have the strength to walk on his own. Zhongde! Zhongde! Qiao Dongbua paled in fright as he called out to his son. He abruptly turned his head and glared at Duan Yu. "You punk, you're too vicious." "What did I do?" Duan Yu glared at Qiao Dongbua in bewilderment. "You just had to send a minor level 6 mystic cultivator to spar with me. I only lightly stretched out a finger, and he was sent flying. Is this my fault?" Everyone was silent. Just now, everyone saw very clearly that fourth young Master Duan had really only lifted a finger and poked Qiao Zhongde's fist once. Subsequently, Qiao Zhongde lost control and directly tumbled in the air, wailing miserably as he was flung out of the main hall by a terrifying force. To be precise, he really was sent flying by fourth young Master Duan's finger. No wonder your Qiao family is impatient to bring our Jojo home. So it's because the other members of your Qiao family are all weak chickens. Duan Yu mocked. Although what he said was the truth, Qiao Dongbua still flew into a rage out of humiliation. "Do you think I wanted the crown princess to join this competition for our family clan?" Qiao Dongbua retorted angrily, "I did it for the great king and also for our northern moi." To put it bluntly, the reason our 8 great patrician families are holding this competition is to select 4 outstanding youths under the age of 20, in order to prepare for the decennial mystic beast forest secret realm. Think about it. If the crown prince consort enters the mystic beast forest secret realm as a Qiao clan descendant, even if she doesn't have 100% certainty, she must at least have an 80% certainty that she will be able to obtain 1 or 2 treasures for our Mo kingdom from the secret realm. The great king's eyes lit up. Patriarch Qiao's words are true. The crown princess. Following the great king's call, everyone's gaze once again fell on the crown princess. But what was the crown princess doing? She was still holding the small bowl and eating slowly. She ate the fish slices in vinegar with her chopsticks and braised shark fin with her chopsticks. She was eating alone and seemed to be eating quite happily. The great king's lips twitched as he shot his son a look that said, "You should discipline your wife." Prince Mo was quite happy because his wife ate quite a lot today. Tomorrow, he would definitely reward the chefs in the royal kitchen for making dishes that suited their Jojo's taste. "Jojo, don't choke. Drink some porridge to moisten your throat." Prince Mo handed a bowl of porridge to his wife. When he looked up, he noticed the great king's odd gaze and raised a brow. "What are you guys doing? I'm telling you, don't have any ideas about my Jojo. She's not free." Empress Zhao frowned and said kindly to her darling son, "Crown Prince, there are many treasures in the mystic beast forest secret realm. Chapter 866. Amen. The great king showed a rare expression of excitement as he hurriedly nodded. That was the legendary forest mystic realm. This naturally formed mystic realm was rather strange and mysterious. It was said that only youths below the age of 20 and above the age of 13 could enter to search for treasures. If anyone over the age of 20 tried to force their way into the mystic realm, they would be completely exterminated at the entrance. The mystic realm only opened once every 10 years, and each time it opened, it would be open for a month. If one didn't leave the mystic realm in time after a month, they would have to stay in the mystic realm forever. As long as we can retrieve a divine artifact, it can be used as a national treasure. It will be greatly beneficial to the imperial court, Empress Zhao said indifferently. Right. It said that aside from divine artifacts, there are also divine beasts inside. The great king also said very happily. Qiao Dongbu's face lit up, and he immediately cupped his hands towards the great king. In that case, the great king has also agreed to let the crown princess participate in this competition as a Qiao family disciple. Great king, rest assured. With the crown princess cultivation and strength, she will naturally be able to stand out in the selection and obtain a precious spot to enter the mystic realm. Other than the 4 contestants selected by the 8 great patrician families, the great king can also select 2 outstanding youths from official families to join the team. Qiao Dongbu became more and more enthusiastic as he spoke, as if he was about to welcome Arbor back to the Qiao family. Northern Moi had a total of 6 spots for the exploration of the forest mystic realm. Northern Wei and Southern Bailey only had 4 spots. Some of the other small kingdoms in the north and south only had 1 spot, and some of the barren border kingdoms didn't even have a spot. When the other patrician families heard Qiao Dongbu's words, it seemed to make sense. The stronger the teammates, the higher the chances of obtaining treasures during the exploration. According to the rules, the 6 members of the exploration team had to have their inner world scanned when they came out of the mystic realm. At that time, they could only keep 1 treasure, and the rest would have to be handed over to their family clans. Of course, the family still had to pay tribute to the old great king of the Mo kingdom. That was how it was done. Along the way, the young men and women had experienced life and death situations. Even if they risked their lives, they would only be able to obtain a single treasure. In the end, they might even die in the mystic realm. Everyone was excitedly discussing how Arbor returning to the Qiao family was indeed a very beneficial thing for them. The 2 young masters of the Qin estate watched from the side with cold eyes. The young master of the Omega Kotoku even curled up the corners of his mouth, revealing a mocking smile. After Qiao Dongbu and the others finished their discussion, the old great king made the final decision and happily allowed Arbor to report back to the main family. A happy smile appeared on Qiao Dongbu's face. Yet it was at this time that Xiao Mu raised her head to look at them and abruptly asked, "Hey, were you guys discussing me in full swing just now?" Qiao Dongbu turned to look at Arbor with a chuckle, a hypocritical and benevolent smile on his aged face. "Of course we were." Splash. A basin of foot-washing water was taken out from her inner world and directly splashed onto Qiao Dongbu, who was standing in front of her. Our dear Duan Yu, who had long been on guard, had already dodged far away. At this time, only Qiao Dongbu and his sons were affected by the foot-washing water, as well as a corner of the old great king's lapel. Previously, she used the holy water to soak her feet and saved the foot-washing water. She felt that it was quite wasteful to splash it like this. Look, didn't this benefit Qiao Dongbu? Are you awake? Arbor asked kindly. Chapter 867. Qiao Dongbu and his 2 sons were drenched on the spot, and the great king's clothes were inevitably stained with a puddle of water. They looked at each other with ugly expressions, then shifted their gazes to Arbor. In a place like the forest mystic realm. If I really wanted to go, why would I need to fight to the death to get a spot? Arbor looked impatiently at Qiao Dongbu and his son. What, I can't go without a spot. If I want to go in, do you think you trash can stop me? Arbor completely ignored how angry Qiao Dongbu's face was and said with a sneer. Do I have to use your Qiao family's name, risk my life, and pester you to go to the mystic realm to get treasures? Qiao Dongbu, is your brain damaged or am I stupid? Ah, this kind of idea of harming others for your own benefit, you're pretty good. Arbor clapped his little hands and stood up, coldly glancing at Qiao Dongbu and his sons. Hurry up and disappear from my sight. Scram! Xiao Mu shouted, and her icy face was instantly covered in a layer of terrifying killing intent. This angry shout scared Qiao Dongbu so much that he retreated a few steps. When he stood up, His entire face was red and twisted. Qiao Dongbua's second son, Qiao Zhonghao, supported his eldest son, Qiao Zhongde, and angrily looked at Arba. You don't even want the old ancestor anymore, do you? Arba mockingly curled his lips. If the Qiao family's old ancestor really knows, he'll be so angry that he'll come back to life. Vicious woman. Qiao Zhonghao angrily scolded, his entire face filled with shock and anger, as if he would explode in the next moment and tear Arba to pieces. Wei Ziqin was furious. Qiao Zhonghao, do you have to argue about the Qiao family's matters with us here? Since the Qiao family isn't afraid of being humiliated, then I'll have a good talk with you. Who's the vicious woman? Who's the shameless one? You bunch of black-hearted villains. Why don't you look at your own face in the mirror? Aren't you ashamed or blushing? Wei Ziqin's eyes widened as she reprimanded sternly. Back then, on the second day after my family's old Qiao and I moved to the Mo Kingdom capital, we brought gifts to visit the main family according to the rules. And the result? There was no way to enter. He was driven out of the main family. Mother. Arba and Jolin both looked at her and asked, "Is that true?" Qiao Yelan and her second uncle had never mentioned the humiliation they had suffered in front of the children, so Jolin and the others didn't know about it at all. Qiao Zhongde, do you dare to say no? It was you. What did he say to us when he crossed his arms and looked down on us like a snob? Huh? Don't you remember? You're just a country bumpkin. You want to bring some trash to climb up the social ladder? Go back to where you came from. I'm going to return those words to you right now. Wei Ziqin said angrily, word by word, you greedy bastard. You want to use some bullsh** T quota to climb up the ranks of my daughter, the noble crown princess? Scram back to where you came from. Wei Ziqin harumphed at the last sentence, glaring at Qiao Zhongde and his brother with a sharp glint in her eyes. Qiao Zhongde shrunk his neck in fright and retreated a step weakly. Whoosh! A thin piece of paper was flung at Qiao Dongbua's face. Arba glanced at the old man mockingly. Look clearly at what's written in black and white. Chapter 868. The family separation document is written clearly enough, right? Those with good eyes should be able to read it. Arba coldly swept a glance at Qiao Dongbua. I see that you're already so old, so I respect you and call you old sir. Otherwise, you're a shameless old man. You. Qiao Dongbua was so angry that his heart, liver, spleen, and lungs were violently trembling. Arba spread her fingers, and that thin family separation document immediately flew back into her palm with a whoosh. Our family has already separated from Qiao Zhonghing's group of demons and monsters, let alone you guys, who don't know what you're talking about. What, do you think that just because you have the Qiao character on your name, you're family with us? You're deluding yourself into thinking that you can climb the social ladder and talk about friendship with me? Just based on your moral integrity? Are you even worthy? Arba bluntly mocked. Good. Qiao Dongbua was already so angry that he couldn't make a sound, and only his fingers were trembling. He abruptly turned his head and grabbed his son Qiao Zhonghao's shoulder, loudly shouting, "Let's go." Arba leisurely folded that family separation document and coldly swept a glance at Qiao Dongbua and the rest. Family head Qiao, I hope that you're a good person and don't go out and carelessly spread rumors. You know that people who spread rumors will also go to the hell of having their tongues pulled out after they die. They'll never be reincarnated. Arba practically said the last sentence through gritted teeth, one word at a time, until Qiao Dongbua and the rest felt a chill run down their spine, and they turned their heads to take a look. But they saw that the little girl under the waning lights seemed to have a ghostly aura, and the black gates of hell seemed to be faintly visible behind her back, frightening them to the extreme. Qiao Dongbua shrank back and supported the weak and powerless Qiao Zhongde. The father and son trio left the main hall in a huff, not even bothering to say goodbye to the others. The remaining people from the 7 great patrician families and the great king's empress Zhao didn't look so good on their faces. The great king cautiously glanced at his daughter-in-law's dark expression, then secretly peeked at his son, a trace of helplessness rising in his heart. Sigh, so tired. Now that the banquet had turned out like this, everyone's interest was waning. Humph, the entire Chow clan is filled with foul air. None of them are good people. Mu Qianqian sneered. Her voice was neither loud nor soft, but it just happened to fall into everyone's ears. As soon as he said this, Empress Zhao felt even worse. She originally had a lot of complaints about this little stoic. Now that she saw that this stoic's family members weren't all that great, she felt very uncomfortable. Emo Lian's icy gaze landed on Mu Qianqian's face, and it only took an instant for Mu Qianqian to subconsciously shudder. Madame Mu suddenly reached out and grabbed her daughter's hand. Her eyes widened in horror. Mu Boming raised his hand, and a defensive talisman abruptly leaped onto his daughter Mu Qianqian's body. He then shouted, "Your Highness!" Bang! The wine cup in front of Mu Qianqian cracked on its own. Mu Qianqian's entire face was ghastly pale. Because the defensive talisman had helped her block an invisible killing move, even though her little life was saved, her internal organs were hurting from the impact of the residual energy. In that instant just now, she very clearly experienced how ruthless His Highness was when he wanted to end her life on the spot. Mu Qianqian heard the sound of her heart, abruptly shattering. It was very painful. She had only muttered that woman's family was complicated, and she was nearly killed by His Highness. Did this man not allow others to say anything bad about her? Chapter 869. Mu Boming's face was shrouded in a dark haze. Family head Mu gazed coldly at Prince Emo and said, "My humble daughter was rude to the crown princess first, but her crime doesn't warrant death, right? Hope that your highness will forgive her." Emo Lien retracted the powerful force she had released to target Mu Qianqian and also cast an aloof glance at family head Mu. "Family head Mu, your daughter has repeatedly offended our wife. According to the rules, she should be severely punished." Mu Boming's expression shifted, and he looked up at the great king and Empress Zhao sitting at the front. The king's face was a little embarrassed. He had just received such a heavy gift from the Mu family's patriarch, 2 peace talismans. On the other hand, his precious son wanted to make an example of the Mu family's patriarch's daughter. No matter how he looked at it, this was not very kind. The old great king quickly chuckled dryly and sent his son a look as he said, "It's just some small animosity between young ladies. It's fine, it's fine." Seeing his daughter-in-law raise her head and glare at him coldly, the old king's heart thumped, and he hurriedly said, "That, Mu family head, there are still some etiquette and rules that need to be taught to Miss Mu. In the future, it's best not to be impudent in front of the crown princess." Mu Boming responded gravely. There was already no need to continue the banquet at this point. The great king was mentally exhausted, and he hastily pacified everyone before dismissing the banquet with a long sigh of relief. Heavens! If this banquet continued, who knew how much more trouble it would stir up? Emo Lien personally sent Aber's family back before returning to the palace. On the way back, she instructed Huifeng, "Send someone to keep an eye on Qiao Dongbu's family. If they dare to make any moves, then..." Emo Lien gestured for them to be killed on sight. Huifeng nodded in acknowledgement. On the other side, as soon as Mu Qianqian stepped out of the palace gates and boarded the carriage, she couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Madame Mu shrieked in fright. Mu Qianqian didn't want to say anything more to her mother, so she simply closed her eyes and pretended to faint. When Mu Boming heard his wife's screams from inside the carriage, his eyes flickered impatiently. He swung his horsewhip and said, "Send Madam and Miss back to the estate." That night at midnight, Mu Qianqian, who was lying flat on a large bed made of cedar wood, abruptly opened her eyes and got off the bed like a wandering soul. After lighting an incense stick in a corner of the room, she sat back down in front of the dressing mirror and fiddled with her beautiful hair. Outside, there was only a sliver of moonlight spilling on the window lattice, and it was pitch black. "Heh heh heh." A sinister laugh suddenly appeared behind her. "Eldest young Miss Mu, why did you summon this old man so late at night?" The voice that seemed to come from the netherworld was erratic and hoarse. It was so low that it didn't sound like a human's voice. Mu Qianqian gazed into the mirror. That shadow was very short and small, and its entire body was shrouded under a hood. She had never seen this person's face clearly. Black Cat, I promise you, I'll help you steal that top-notch summoning talisman enshrined in the ancestral hall. The shadow was clearly agitated, and its voice started trembling slightly. Really? I have a condition in exchange. Mu Qianqian abruptly stood up in front of the mirror. Under the moonlight, her small face had already contorted into a ball. I heard that you can draw an especially powerful and special talisman. What? The hoarse voice asked. Soul Exchange Talisman. HM? The shadow was clearly shocked by Mu Qianqian's words. Chapter 870. Subsequently, the black shadow let out a series of unpleasant cackles. Eldest Miss Mu, you actually understand us curse practitioners quite well. Mu Qianqian pursed her lips tightly and clenched her fists tightly. It was only after a long while that she couldn't resist roaring, "Deal or not?" "Deal." The black shadow cackled. "I can give you the soul swap talisman 7 days later. At that time, remember to give me that summoning talisman that your Mu family treasures. Remember, you only have one chance to successfully swap your soul. If you fail, you will vomit blood and become paralyzed in the lightest case, and your soul will scatter and you will lose your life on the spot. Gaga gaga ga. This little lady is rather courageous." The laughter was like a wisp of black mist that faded away. Great Master Black Cat. Great Master? Mu Qianqian pushed open the door and searched for the black cat's figure under the moonlight. The black cat had long left, and Mu Qianqian angrily clenched her fists as she muttered to herself, "Just under what circumstances can I use that soul swap talisman? Just how high are the chances of success?" After Mu Qianqian walked in, she used her back to press against the door as she kept muttering to herself, "I want to become the Crown Prince Consort, I am the Crown Prince Consort, I am the Crown Prince Consort. I am the Crown Princess. Qianqian, Mother can see it now. The Crown Prince simply doesn't have any interest in you. Look at how ruthless his methods are, hurting you like this twice. You should give up on him as soon as possible to avoid being covered in bruises." Her mind kept replaying the words that Mother had said while wiping her tears while she was pretending to be unconscious. She was unresigned. Mother had always said that she was the one with the greatest hope of becoming the Crown Princess. And she had always held on to this goal to strive for, working hard to curry favor with Her Majesty the Queen and all the concubines in the imperial harem. Her Majesty the Queen had summoned her more than once and was very satisfied with her. Originally, everything was fine. She only needed to wait peacefully to be conferred the title of Crown Princess. But why did everything change in a single night? It was that little B*TCH who stole all the glory that belonged to her and shamelessly stole away her beautiful future. Since it was useless to beg her father, mother, and anyone else, she could only think of a way to do it herself. "Thud. Return. Come on. I am the Crown Princess. I am. The more she muttered, the more resolute her gaze became. She raised the sleeve of her white undergarment and waved it in the air in front of her. A strange smile appeared on the corner of her mouth as she coquettishly said, "There's no need to be so courteous. You may all rise." At this moment, the Shu residence had also sunk into a cloud of gloom. The mistress had attempted to hang herself in the middle of the night. After she was rescued, the master flew into a rage and scolded her fiercely. Then, he flung his sleeves and left. At daybreak, Madame Shu started to make a fuss again. She cried and made a fuss, looking for ropes and moving stools, scaring a large group of maidservants until their faces turned pale. Because when the sun was still rising, the etiquette instructor sent by the Queen sat outside Madame Shu's bedroom. Her eyelids drooped and the corners of her mouth curled up as she said sternly, "This old servant is Nanny Gong, who came on the orders of Her Majesty the Queen to teach Madame Shu etiquette and rules again." Madame Shu didn't want to live anymore. This unruly old servant had been sitting outside her courtyard early in the morning, repeating the same sentence over and over again. Perhaps the concubines in the master's rear courtyard were rolling on their beds with laughter right now. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.